I am an ECE graduate from the University of the Philippines. I come from Quezon City. I'm an only child. My mother was a teacher, public school teacher elementary. My father is a small businessman. So I guess you can say, ma'am, na early on, medyo may exposure po ako sa discipline coming from a mother that was an educator. So I remember when I was still in elementary, even in high school, my mom used to make me mock exams before the exam. So mahigpit ang pagpapalaki. But also I saw the side of my dad, which is a small business owner. He's into engineering as well. So I also saw that side of, running a business, talking to customers, weathering through financial crisis and what to do. So growing up po, medyo ganun yung aking orientation. And also, because my mom was a public school teacher, medyo na-expose din po tayo on a little bit about the government, what our country needs, what the schools need, etc. So, yun po yung aking personal background. Even if I was an ECE graduate, ako po ay color weak eh. So, I cannot see the difference between red and green so much. So, sa school, medyo may challenge tayo doon. So, sabi po sa akin maganda daw na maging programmer na lang ako. So, when I graduated, I ventured into programming talaga. My first work was with multinationals. So, I first worked with IBM. I worked for IBM for a number of years. Doon nahasa po yung aking programming skills. But at the same time, nahasa din po doon yung ability to interact with not just colleagues within the country but also colleagues across the world. So we used to work with teams po in China, in the US, in India. So doon yung bahagyang nahasa po yung com skills natin and dealing with varying cultures. So medyo nakatulong din naman po sa akin down the road. So yun po, na-contribute din po nung stint na yun with the multinational was that I was able to also see the difference of service that, a multinational company that can pay millions of dollars as opposed to, what the service most agencies, most companies here in the Philippines get. At so medyo doon po natanim yung kumbaga ay seeds, no, na pagnanais na baka makapagbigay tayo ng similar service, if not better, to firms who does not have access to such service at the point. So, syempre, nung panahon po yun, medyo kaunti pa yung experience natin. So, nag-ipon pa po tayo ng experience. After working for IBM, I worked for a smaller firm, a local firm, but in the same industry, also software. Doon naman po na-expose tayo on interacting with companies locally dito. Conglomerates, medium-sized businesses, mga manufacturing, retail. So consultative po kasi yung trabaho natin doon eh. We build software for those companies. We work closely with their project managers, with their end users. So mas na reinforce po ba kumbaga yung teorya natin na there's still a lot to be improved in the type of IT services, a type of software that the locals get. So I had to make a choice, no, na do I try to, grow this, not grow even, launch this small venture na suntok sa buwan, di naman natin alam kung lilipat. I come from an engineering background, so malay ko po ba sa pagpapatakbo ng negosyo. Or, continue with my working visa here in Australia, no, and live the Aussie life, no, sarap ng buhay po nila doon eh. Hindi ko po alam kung anong nakain ko o pero nauwi po ako doon sa unang option. So narito po ako nakaharap ninyo. So I decided to not pursue with the working visa. I decided to stay here. That was I think 8 years ago, so matagal-tagal na po. When I look back, dalawa yung blessing na nakuha ko po doon. Yung aking girlfriend po noon at that time, na 1 year pa lang yata kami. Naging asawa ko na po ngayon. So sabi ko, buenas naman pala. Baka kung ako yung nag-LDR, baka di kami nagkatuluyan. So that's one. Number two, as I've said, as I am an only child, so at least I'm here na medyo driving distance lang po sa ating mga magulang. So that's a blessing. Well, objectively speaking po, no, so I remember I started mga side hustles around 2012, 2013. So that was, you can say, the genesis of the company. So mostly side hustles, typical sa atin po, lalo pag bata, gusto natin rumakit, pangbili ng bagong cellphone, pang date, di po ba, pang biyahe. So I did those things also. Pero I quickly realized na syempre, most firms respect more if you are registered, if you have a company. Also, of course, you can't pay the BIR if you don't have, so you can't contribute to nation building. And of course, you're not legitimate, you're fly-by-night. So that's one of the primary objective motivations why we wanted to formalize the company. The second one po is we saw na may traction naman. May traction. So 2014, we officially incorporated the company. So you could say na the primary driver was there was na validation that there is a need being addressed. Number two, of course, is the economic factor, obviously po, syempre. At that time, may kaunting boom po tayo in the technology scene, startup scene, no? Doon nag-uumpisa yung mga likes ni Grab, ni Uber, bago pa lang yan, sila Lyft, sila Airbnb. So, syempre po, nagtitrickle down iyon sa atin sa Pilipinas, no, yung mga kwentong iyon. So, syempre may ganoong factor din na baka pwede, no? Baka we can do something that can be successful here. At mas nakapagbuyo pa po nung factor na yon, nung economic factor, was that in the next few years after we really started the business, medyo pinalad tayo na manalo ng ilang competitions po yung team natin. So it added validation. So we joined a few competitions in Malaysia, in Dubai, also in Taiwan, na nanalo po yung team natin. No? So it was a team effort, mostly programming competitions po. So sabi namin, parang may maganda pala, no? Parang okay naman pala yung ginagawa natin. So nakadagdag po yun. So and frankly po, no, frankly speaking, the third motivation was really a sense of responsibility, I guess. Lalo na po nung naumpisahan na yung negosyo at kumbaga pwede mong sabihin napasubo na. Siyempre, you are responsible for your employees, for your partners. Noong 2016 po, nakakuha kami ng investor. So you're responsible for your investors. So I guess in the dark times, no, pwedeng yung nation building component or yung economic component, pwedeng medyo maging malabo yun. But the sense of responsibility, parang mahirap po yatang maisantabi. So I guess yun po yung mga drivers. Kapag good times, the economic factor, the bayan, the helping. Pag dark times, it's the sense of responsibility. And I guess in the 2020, 2021 years po, no, at the height of the pandemic, mas yun po talaga yung nangibabaw. I can't fail our people. I can't fail the families of our people. Actually, the first customer ever of the company was really with the FDA. We worked with them through a grant, no? Through a grant from, I remember it was Grand Challenges Canada, to work with SME drugstores. So yun po yung una naming proyekto. Kung familiar sila sa mga mom and pop na drugstore po, di po ba yellow pad lang yung inventaryo ng mga drugstore. So usually isa lang ang tindera, di ba? Lalo yung mga kanyari sa Bambang, di ba? Punta po tayo, or sa mga maliliit na bayan. Very informal. So when we worked with the FDA for the SME drugstores, ang nakita pong challenge ay how do we know, number one, know if there are any regulatory issues being encountered within those SME drugstores. Are they selling counterfeit medicines? Are they selling medicines na wala reseta, etc., etc.? So we helped the FDA create a simple platform that they can give for free to these SME drugstore owners, no? Para meron silang sistema para makapag-inventaryo, may sistema sila para report ng mga anomalya, and even for the consumer. That project wasn't really successful in that there had been rollout problems. As we know po, no, lalo sa IT, building a system is easy, but rolling it out, rallying end users to use it, rallying the general population to use it. Yung contact tracing nga lang po natin, di po ba, ang hirap gamitin eh. Iba-iba tayo ng platform. But what it did was open up to me, no? Parang sabi, kagaya po ng na-share ko kanina, may teorya ako na may pangangailangan sa atin for better IT systems. It was validated a little bit, but that first project really validated it on the ground. Kasi when we were doing FGDs with senior citizens, for example, nandun yung clamor, nandun yung katuwaan na may pwede palang ganitong sistema na makakabuti sa kanila. So we started in 2014, ma'am, but 2 years before we started the side hustle. So the side hustles, we were just two barkadas. Typical story, we were out of my bedroom in La Loma. We used to bring our computers in my room overnight para lang deliver projects. So that was the genesis. So you could say, ma'am, that we started with friends as founders. When we really incorporated in 2014, we were 5 incorporators, all our friends. Iba orgmate, iba katabing building sa school. So yun po yung nag-umpisa, no? Syempre, when we started, we all had the same idea. We all had similar goals. I'm happy naman that hindi naman kami nag-away-away throughout the how many years. But also, I can say that we kept intact. Actually, one of the original incorporators is si wife ko na ngayon, no? So she's number 2. The rest of our barkadas, we parted ways throughout the journey. So throughout the 8-year journey, we parted ways. Amicably naman, 2 out of the 5 had family reasons. Pareho silang magkakaroon na ng, nung time na yan, may anak na, may baby na. So the difficulty of the long hours, the long days, the stress was really difficult for them. They wanted time to spend with their wives. Lalo yung isa, medyo pag alas 5 na, tinatawagan na ng asawa para sunduin sa PGH. So medyo hindi na pwede po sa long hours. Yung isa naman, frankly, ito, I think this is a good story kasi tayo, sabi niyo po ma'am, no, most of us are in the government. So when we started working with government agencies in 2018, not being naive, no, there's not so good reputation of working with government, no, particularly with procurement. When we started the company in 2014, one of our tenets was really if we can do as less evil as possible, we'll do it. No, so the lesser evil, the better. So nung 2018, when we incorporated, takot yata yung isa kong founder, sabi niya, James, parang natatakot ako kasi I don't know. Paano paghingan tayo ng pera? Paano paghingan ako ng 1 million para i-award sa atin? Yung ganun po. No? And I told them, well, number 1, we haven't had that question at the time yet. So we don't know. And sabi ko, it does not mean that if we get asked a question, you're obliged to answer. I don't think there's a gun to your head to answer. So sabi ko, if we keep our values intact, I would like to think we'll be fine. But he had different, that's still his fear. So in 2018, sabi niya, I don't want that risk. So eventually in 2018, it was just me and my wife now who were running the business. But of course, the team was growing. No? So anyway, with regard to that concern naman po nung aking partner, I'm happy naman, no? And I'm happy na 8 years into the company, dealing with government since 2018. Syempre, there's the usual dinner, lunch, no? But it's typical. Even in private sector, you do it. So sabi ko, sayang, no? Kasi that fear was really unfounded for my partner. And as I told him nga, we know naman how to draw the line. And I guess whether that's public or private sector, there will be those instances. And I guess it's a matter of what you do in those instances that will matter more. Today, we have around 57, 56 employees. So we were able to grow. Aside from that, we nakapag-spin off din po tayo ng 2 subsidiaries. So we have a health tech subsidiary called Health Blocks. It has around 12 employees. And we also have, hindi pala subsidiaries, associate naman po. Ticket to Me, it's a digital ticketing company. It has around the same amount of employees. So total, you could say we have around 80 plus employees in the group. In terms of training them, there isn't really a formal training at the beginning. So we were medyo guerrilla style po talaga kami. Kumbaga na, engineer po eh. So ship it fast, ika nga. We've always believed in independence. So all our employees, all our around 80 plus employees, we believe in independent thinking, in independent management. Dapat self-managing ka. You should be able to manage yourself. You should be able to manage your deliverables, manage your customer, and also self-learning. Learn what you need to learn what gaps you have. No? Kasi po, siguro dahil ako yung only child na sanay po ako doon, self-managing, self-learning, wala namang kalaro, di ba? Bata ka. So parang yun din po yung inaasahan namin with our employees, with our partners, managers na you learn, you self-manage. And kaakibat po noon, I guess the overarching principle is really trust. Mas nag-manifest po iyon nung itong pandemic, no, where all of us suddenly work from home. No, you need to trust. You need to trust that your hire, your partner is aligned with your vision, aligned with your values, and that kahit di mo pulisin, magpo-produce. Trust and being able to be independent. Yun po yung... And so far, nag-work pa naman po, hoping to still make it work in the long run. We embraced the concept of kumbaga, you can say it's lean startup. So, ginagawa po namin, we identify problematic or for improvement parts of the company. We focus our resources there, use as little as possible na resources, and then when things are improving, things are getting better, we scale it. So that's how we did for our back office, for finance, for human resources, for training, for business development, and most importantly po, engineering. Nung umpisa po, we've had engineering problems. Siyempre, quality, delivery, kagad si customer. 6 months lang yung project. Month 9 na, nasaan na yung mga ganun po ba? So, malaking improvement po yung nagawa namin doon, no? Slowly but surely. But of course, not without mistakes, not without angry customers. But ang commitment po namin sa aming mga customer simple lamang po, walang iwanan. So, especially in the beginning, just be patient with us. We'll also be patient and we'll also be, kahit na kumbaga, in Tagalog po, kahit nalugi na, will not leave you. Will not leave you, will deliver. Kasi kasalanan naman po namin Pero kumbaga, it's a give and take. It's a give and take. Whether that's public or private sector naman po, I think most customers appreciate that. We've had customers in UP before. Fairly recently, ginawa namin yung data privacy website ng UP DIliman. We've also worked with Ateneo de Manila, with UST, with Mapua, a few more. Kalimutan ko na po yung... Philippine Science pala. Philippine Science has been a long-term customer in the whole network. So, although gobyerno din po sila. I guess may pros and cons po yata lahat. And frankly, I enjoy working with all. So for example po, syempre, with academe, because most academic institutions are not really for-profit, kahit na yung mga private schools naman po. So syempre, there is always this sensitivity with budget. There's also this sensitivity about the scale kasi usapang number of students. So may ganong factor, di po ba? So parang ibabalanse mo yung costs, yung effort, yung resources required versus the budget constraints, tapos yung scale required. So for example po, with Philippine Science High School, we work with 16 campuses, we needed to roll out across 16 campuses. So yung mga ganung factors po. So may ganon. So may customer po kami, hindi ko napapangalanan, but they've been our customer since 2018. Pag kinumpute po yung numbers nun, talagang lugi na. Pero the customers have stuck with us kahit na medyo nag-iiba yung requirements. We've also stuck with them. Ay matatapos na po, magla-live na yung kanilang ERP. No? So wala iwanan kumbaga po. Private po yon. Yung public sector, meron din isa mas fairly newer naman, 2020. Ganun din po, nagbabago yung requirement. Minsan hindi sila sure sa pangangailangan. But we stay with them. We stay with them. Big or small project. No? So that has been the philosophy. For private, frankly, syempre, relatively simpler kasi they're not covered by procurement rules, no? 8184, wala namang ganon. If you work with the owners, lalo kung small business, if they like you, okay na, diba? But that's the SME. If you go larger, what we observe is they behave very similarly to public sector. So conglomerates, bigger companies, parang public sector na rin po eh. Parang public bidding din kumbaga. Merong ang 3 envelope din. May mga ganun din eh. May mga TOR din na nire-release. Compliance sheet. So sabi ko namin, mas naging sophisticated din I guess yung private sector in that regard. Which we like. Kasi po, kami po eh, dahil po eh maliit na kumpanya, bata din po ako. So frankly, the network is not yet that deep. Hindi po ba? Hindi naman po tayo galing sa pamilyang may kaya. So kumbaga, hindi naman yung tatay ko ay barkada ni Zobel de Ayala, yung mga ganun, di po ba? So when private sector mimic the public sector in procurement, mas nagkaroon po kami ng fighting chance ba? Kasi mas naging objective kahit papaano. Siyempre, you need to get into the door, so the network helps. But once you're in the door, medyo mas objective na. So nakatulong yung ganong aspeto ng private sector. Contrary to popular belief din po, sabi nila private sector mas mabilis magbayad. Di rin naman po. Ganun din eh. Di po ba? Ganun din po eh. We have customers, may 60-day term, 90-day term standard. Di ba? You work with public sector, minsan nga, bebunasin pa pag 30 days, ang bilis eh. Di po ba? So kanya-kanya din po eh. So akala ko dati private sector mas mabilis, public sector mas mabagal, pare-pareho din naman po. So it equalizes there also. In terms of I guess yung emotional part or yung sa dali po pakikitungo, may team hindi po sa pambobol, but my team enjoys public sector. Kasi po I guess mas madali kausap in terms of when you already connect to them. Minsan po kasi ang private sector eh pakiramdam namin minsan eh parang nabili na kami. Parang ganoon po ba? Parang binili na yung kaluluwa namin, parang so I guess mas again, I mean tayo lang naman po nag-uusap. So parang mas tao kausap ang public sector. I guess that's what we really like. Lalo po pag yung na-meet niyo na po in person. Marami po sa kliyente namin nung last 2 years eh nami-meet lang namin ngayon in person. So parang mas masarap pong kasama ba. So I guess all in all, ganun yun lang naman po experience. Medyo comparable. There are few quirks, no. Syempre sa public sector ang negative, hindi naman negative, pero isa sa mga challenges really is syempre we need to strict with COA rules and all the nitty-gritty of COA rules, no. So hindi naman siya negative, but it's a challenge that is part and parcel. So kunyari po, ito kwento lang din. We sell Google po kasi. Google, so cloud services, workspace, Google Cloud, ganyan, Gmail. So ang na-experience namin lately, ang trato pala sa subscription, parang telco. So parang tubig, parang kuryente. So ang napapansin namin ngayon, when it is treated like that, parang utility na buwan-buwan binabayaran. Sabi namin, ma'am, pag binayaran namin si Google, isang bultuhan, parang gano'n. So yung mga ganong quirks, no? So, but I understand naman po. Ikalawa din, comparing public to private, pag nasa GSD na, yung i-inspect ba, cloud yung binibenta namin, ma'am, di ba? So, nasaan yung server? Nasa cloud po. Asan yun? Di ba po, medyo mahirap i-explain. Pero again, we understand the quirks, we understand the challenges. Meron pa po kami pinapaprint sa CD ay sa bond paper yung source code. Ma'am, ganito kakapal, 3 copies pa. So, yung mga ganun. But I guess it's part of the challenge, part of the learning. Na-enjoy naman po ng team. I guess sa 8 years po namin ginagawa ito, naka-identify na po, parang naaamoy po ba na parang whether private, public, or academe, masisense po natin kung para malabo kausap yata yung project manager sa kabila. Parang iba-iba yung gusto. Parang ganun. So, medyo naswertihan po namin na the state of the company today, if we smell that, quote-unquote, medyo kaya na po bang if not walk away, raise the flag already. And that's across academe, public, and private po. Kasi may ganun po, di po ba, parang medyo malabo yung thought process, or parang takot, yung ganun po ba? Or parang ayaw mag-take accountability, yung ganun po. So, medyo nare-raise na rin naman po namin yung flags early on. At kung hindi talaga magagawa ng paraan, instead of trying to push for it, we try to, if not walk away, endorse other partners. Kasi yung iba, minsan kaya nila yung ganoong uri. In terms of, I guess, objective metrics, ma'am, no, in being able to say this is a project that's worth it or not. I guess number 1 will be value add. What is our value add? I mean, us meaning the company. What are we bringing into the table? There's a lot of projects po kasi out there, no, whether you're in IT or elsewhere, na wala masyadong value add yung kumpanya. Yung iba, kunyari, pass-through kasi hindi magka-qualify. Mga ganon, di po ba? Anong value add natin? Parang wala naman. Ikalawa, value add in terms of skill sets. Maaring the network is there, we can bring in the talent because we know people, pero baka naman yung galing natin hindi akma. So, I guess it takes a lot of self-awareness in our part to admit na, alam niyo po, hindi po kami yung tama para dito. Baka pumalpak kung kami hindi para dito. So that's a second po, no? What's the value add? That's the first one. Value add in terms of talent, value add in terms of the role of the company. Ikalawa po is, whether that's academe, private, or public, the straightness of the deal. The straightness of the deal in terms of what are we being asked to do, no? In terms of ano yung scope, clearly defined ba, malinaw ba yung TOR, malinaw ba yung mga champions, malinaw ba sa mga champions yung requirement para sa proyektong ito, may funding ba, may future ba ang project na ito, meaning hindi ba ito year 2022 lang at next year ay wala na. May mga ganun po kasi, di po ba, kahit saan. So tinitingnan po namin yung direction ng proyekto. Ikatlo din po is yung, I would dare say, contribution to society. So for example, e-sabong. May dumating sa amin na papagawa ng e-sabong app. Milyon-milyon, di po ba? So, syempre it's tempting on a financial, economic measure. Pero, ano po bang ambag sa society? Meron naman siguro, di ba, tax, meron naman siya, contribution. Pero maraming nalululong, maraming nawawalan ng pera. So, may mga ganoon din po kaming factors. Tapos din po, meron na ba kaming pumalpak ng mga projects? Marami po. We've had failures in varying degrees. Does not mean na hindi kami bumawi at make it right. Pero there have been many failures. Number 1, most common is the timeline failure. That there is the timeline na hindi naman si kliyente ang nag-set. Minsan kasi ang failure pag may gustong timeline si customer na hindi feasible. We've had instances that we set the timeline but we cannot deliver the timeline, and there has been a lot of re-estimations of the timeline. So that's the most common. Lalo po nung bago-bago kami. It's the most common when we were younger, when we were less formal and we were less structured as a company. Another failure na experience namin is with regard to budget. Namin po. So we say, kunyari, we get this project, kunyari po, for 10,000 pesos because we think we will be able to deliver it for like 5,000 pesos. And it ends up, the numbers doesn't not make sense. Nangyari po sa amin yun, madalas din dati. Dahil nga po ako'y engineer, wala naman po akong alam sa finances. Akala ko po, dati, bata po ko noon na yung sweldo lang yung kukumpitin ko, yun na yun. Kunyari, 5 tao, project, times kunyari lang, 20,000 na Saudi, 100,000 times 3, di 300,000. Benta ko ng 600, okay na, parang ganun po ba. Pero there's many things that we don't see, like overhead, upa, kuryente, pa-laptop, pa-meeting, internet, etc. etc. Nung pag kinumpit ko pagtapos ng project, ay wala pala akong kita. So that's the second most common failure din po. Ikatlo din po is kaugnay ni one and number 2, yung anak nila, scope. So there's sa IT services po, there's what we call scope creep. No, there's a lot of scope creep in IT services. Kasi po kumbaga, sky's the limit eh. Para ka po bang nagpapagawa ng bahay? Yung bahay naman hangga't may lupa at hangga't may hangin, pwede mong gawing 100 story kung may budget, di po ba? So that's the third most common scope creep na dati nung bata pa po kami, hindi namin magawang masabi. Kung iharap po kami kunyari sa Director General o ang hirap naman humindi lalo kung ikaw ay bata. So ngayon, medyo kumapal na yung mukha namin na nakakahindi na kami. So it's important na learn po namin na if we do not raise these things, we only are able to please the customer at the beginning. Kasi slowly, they will be angry. Bakit hindi ma-deliver on time? Bakit ganito? Bakit? Yung ganun po bang mga bakit na masasagot when you just say no. So I guess yun po yung mga various failures na experience namin. And in all of those failures, I'm happy to report naman na we were aware enough to admit the mistakes, and we were humble enough to make it right. So in the past, we've paid penalties with our customers. Kami nag-i-impose sa sarili namin, no? Hindi po ibabalik namin yung inyong bilahe. Parang gano'n. Meron ding pagkakataon, hindi po i-deliver namin whatever natin. Everybody, especially new, no? Bagong officer sa kumpanya, bagong boss natin sa gobyerno o whatever, they always say, let's innovate. Di po ba? To the point na sometimes it becomes an empty promise. What we learned most of the time, the innovation is sometimes doing less, sometimes doing the mas lumang approach, meaning using older tools, not necessarily newer tools, not necessarily cutting edge, but making the most out of what you have. For at least for me personally po, that is my definition of innovation. Making the most of what you have. Most of the customers that we faced before, private public academy, they always request for the brand new technology, brand new programming language. Okay to, bago to, subukan natin. Pero ang laging tanong innovation for what? What are we innovating towards? What is the value? Is it tested? So for me personally, innovation is really finding the problem and the right solution for that problem. Kasi otherwise po, it's a waste of time. So for me, yun nga, dapat may purpose, dapat may patutunguhan, dapat baka may magagamit ka ng luma, tapos i-improve lang, pwede na. For example, many companies and agencies ask for the next big thing in terms of programming language. Okay ba yan, yung bagong JavaScript framework na yan? Okay ba yan, yung ganyan? But the reality po is, PHP can do the job. Diba? Yung sa ating mga IT niya, PHP can do the job. Hindi sexy, hindi popular, but it can still do the job. You can easily train a fresh graduate na bagong plantilla hire ng PHP rather than the more modern languages. Yung mga ganun pong experience. So, but it does not mean naman po na may mga pagkakataon na hindi ka gagamit ng bago. Minsan ang sagot lang talaga ay bago. But I guess, yun lang, I guess my last sentence for that is, the key po talaga for innovating is really finding the right solution for the problem. Whether it's a new solution or an old solution. Okay, successes and low points. Successes muna, ma'am. I think, again, frankly speaking po kasi, right now, I do not consider the awards before as successes. Kasi una, luma na sila, ang tagal na nun. Kumbaga, it does not indicate how good or how bad I am today. So those are not really success. Maybe at the time, they were. For me, my biggest success po, and dati parang hindi ako naniniwala, pero parang naniniwala na ako ngayon, that really one of my bigger successes is really seeing the people grow, seeing the people succeed, seeing that our people are able to provide for their families. Medyo corny po sabihin, pero parang totoo pala na sometimes it transcends the money, yung 8 taon naman po ng pag-business, di naman po kami yumaman din. So, ganun din naman. So, it really transcends money. It really seeing, the benefit that it brings to your people. Kumbaga for all the bad that happens in the world, parang you're trying to make a small community. And that change that you can build in the small community, pwede na yun lang yung kaya. May empleyado po kami, nangangatog yun dito pag nagsasalita kahit kami lang. Yang talaga siya, talaga takot siya. And pagmaga, very, very geek. Pero ngayon, no, talagang fabulous na siya, talagang eloquent. Tapos, yung nakakatuwa po, meron din po na syempre may mga financial challenges, so with yung empleyado, and you're able to help them, give them assistance, and they're grateful. So nakakataba po ng puso yun. Tapos kino-consider din po naming successes, frankly, the way we were able to weather not just the pandemic, but all of the low points. So to your question, ma'am, kanina, were there low points? There's a lot of low points. I'll share a little bit later. But I guess one of our successes really is weathering through the low points. Sabi nga po nung mga na-meet ko dati na mga successful businessman, ang susi lang daw huwag sumuko. So kahit na po gustong sumuko, minsan walang choice pala, kaya pala huwag susuko. But I guess yun po yung isa sa mga bigger successes namin. Connect ko po sa low points, there have been many points I cannot count po in my hand that I really wanted to give up. There were many points na both on a company, on a personal level, sa bangko, wala pa yata mabibiling Starbucks coffee. Mga panahong dati po. And it was really very difficult po. Many sleepless nights, many tears, I guess. And yung success po doon is despite of nagawa naman ng paraan. I'm not a very religious person po, pero I would say na during those times na very challenging, di naman po napabayaan kahit papaano tayo. So very grateful doon sa ating may kapal doon. In terms of what the low points were, mostly ay dahil din naman po sa kakulangan natin ng experience. We've had people problems, dahil din po hindi kami experienced pa noong umpisa, we were not very effective leaders. Hindi naman sa naninigaw ka o sa bastos ka, but really minsan the decisions that you make because you're inexperienced, may mga trickle down effects din pala na nalalaman mo lang sa dulo. So I think around 2018, 2019 then may times na we were able to create a very toxic culture. A very yung walang trust na culture. Yun nga po yung fundamental namin. So we had to unlearn and we had to redo the culture. So, and of course, may investors at partners din po kami. So one of the low points also is, may mga partners at investors po nawawalan ng tiwala, nawawalan ng pag-asa, hindi po ba? So those were also the challenges, mga times na even the partners were having doubts. And you need to power through, kumbaga po. And lastly po, low points were, again, in the middle of the pandemic, we had to ask ourselves, do we let go of people, or do we share the challenge? Do we share the burden? Um, so ang una-una ko pong ginawa, hindi naman po kalakihan yung sahod ko nung to begin with, pero in-scrap namin yung sahod namin. Sahod ko pala mula March 15, 2020 hanggang matapos yung taon. So enough lang pambayad ng utilities at grocery kumbaga. So para ma-minimize yung impact sa ating mga empleyado. Tapos may time na ni-rotate na namin yung mga typical rotate ng schedule para makatipid. So it was a really low point, but at the same time it was a success kasi nung natapos yung taon na-survive namin at kumbaga may balik kasi nabuhay ulit yung ekonomiya kahit pa paano. Tapos medyo nag-grow kami na. Last ko na sigurong low point will be the emotional pala. Yun medyo hindi makikita sa labas ng kwarto, sa labas ng banyo, di ba? Pero there's a lot of emotional po pala na may experience mo. Psychological. Medyo mahirap talaga. Kasi even if you're experiencing something, you need also to keep a brave face. Siyempre, you tell them, take a rest, take it easy, it's okay, you'll be fine. If you need a week to be ready, you get a week, sige, pahinga ka. But kapag po pala ikaw ang leader, hindi mo masabi sa sarili mo yun kasi you need to, pwede ka umiyak sa gabi, pasok ka bukas ng umaga, 9 o'clock. Parang gano'n. So, yun po yung hirap, di po ba? At kaakibat po nun, syempre yung time para sa sarili at pamilya. Ako po'y nanaba simula nung ako'y nag-umpisa sa journey ito. Syempre less time din po for the family, less energy for the family. So yun din po yung not necessarily low points but challenges na kaakibat. We did not actively seek investors. But I guess we were blessed and fortunate to be able to attract them at the right time. Our first investor was actually an early customer. So, ang kwento po nun, they wanted to invest actually in a different company. And that company outsourced the development to us. Tapos, nung natapos na yung development, yung owners ng company decided to dissolve and just migrate kasi may better opportunity. So sabi ni investor dapat nila, so what do I do? Sabi so nag-usap-usap sila, why not we just invest here? Mukhang alam naman yata nila yung ginagawa nila. So that was our first investor. They are an angel investment company. We were one of their earlier investments. And that really opened up a lot of opportunities for us. That investment group introduced our second investor and the most recent investor. And those people just amplified the network and the knowledge po. For network, again, because we're young, our network is very limited. So they really opened up the doors to all sectors, the academe, the public, and the private. They also allowed us to mature operationally and process-wise because nakita namin po kumbaga in their own companies, ano yung tama, ano yung mali. So that allowed us to really grow as fast as we can. Hindi po kasi kami yung traditional na masasabi yung startup, kumbaga, kasi we're an IT company na hindi naman sexy yung ginagawa. So we feel na actively looking for investors is not really the cup of tea. But I guess the best way to coordinate with investors is through word of mouth. So yung introduction na yon sa amin really helped us to connect with similar investors. So when the time comes, hopefully they will be able to also help us. Well, totoo yung sabi ko na don't do it, but in a non-joking manner, don't do it for the wrong reasons. Pag nanood po kasi tayo ng TV, ng YouTube, or nagbasa ng dyaryo, at least in my case, it was all glamour. Diba? You see the CEOs in suits, yung mga forma, mga Rolex, ganyan-ganyan. Tapos, abay, parang ang sarap ng buhay. So, may merong facade po kasi. No? So I think that's one of the wrong reasons, I think, na if you're in it for the glory, for the forma, for the glamour, there's very few of it, I guess. Very few. So don't do it for that. Don't do it also for the money, at least for the money early on. Ang na-learn ko po, one of my few mentors at the beginning, he told me na, sabi niya sa akin, hindi ko po malilimutan, give yourself mga 10 years. Pero 10 years of really hard work. And then you will feel some of the money. Some pa lang po yun. Hindi ka pa yayaman na, but some you will feel. And parang totoo po pala, sabi ko, tagal pala. So parang nung after mga bandang dulo, 8 years ko na po ginagawa, nakakaluwag na po ng kaunti. As in literal na kaunti po. Ang tagal. Ang tagal. So don't do it for the money, at least for the money na gusto mo maramdaman agad. And also, don't do it for pleasing others. Meron po kasi na yung iba gusto mag-impress ng ibang tao, meron din na gusto na naiinggit, diba? May negosyo si ganyan may bago siyang gawin ko din kaya. So don't do it for those reasons. Do it for a bigger purpose, I guess, that is beyond yourself. Do it when you see a problem that needs addressing. Also, don't do it pala for the illusion of getting more time. I think it's again, at least early on. Kasi po, ako personally, in my 8 years, the last 5 years at least, has been all long hours. All going home at around 9 or 10. Tapos uwi ka, trabaho pa ulit. All hours na you'll do everything, including walis sa office, magkumpulin ng tumutulong aircon, at makipag-away sa mag-install ng internet, yung mga ganun pa. All those, again, liban na lang kung ikaw ay pinalad na may kaya sa umpisa. All of those challenges you will face. So the work-life balance or the more time, abay sa umpisa parang hindi po yata totoo. So yun po. So And lastly, I guess my advice for would-be entrepreneurs is really the same advice that I received. Just don't give up. Keep pushing forward. If you really believe you want to be this is your life's calling, and this is what you want to do, then don't give up. Don't give up at the first sign of problem. Don't give up at the first sign of financial difficulty or whatever. Learn from the roadblock, learn from the challenge, and adapt, and then move forward. Sooner or later, parang makakatama ka din ng tama, then double down. I guess yun po. So, hindi masyadong quotable, pero at least from my personal experience, ma'am, parang yun lang yung gumana. Hopefully, gumana din for other would-be entrepreneurs.